You're listening to Served Up, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful conversations. I'm your host, Bridget Albert, also known as a Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with decades of experience. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry. Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. I am thrilled to have a truly inspiring guest with us today, Nino Gandulla, an agave and innovative advocate for Casa Lumbre Spirits. Nino's passion for agave spirits and her innovative approach to tradition and modern techniques has made her a standout leader in the industry. As an advocate for sustainability and the rich culture and heritage behind agave, she's been at the forefront of bringing new ideas and perspectives to one of the world's oldest and most beloved spirit-making traditions. In this conversation, we'll dive deep into her journey, the future of agave spirits, and how innovation is shaping the industry in exciting new ways. So grab yourself your favorite cocktail and enjoy the show. Nino, welcome to Served Up. I am so happy to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your invite and having me, taking the time to speak with me.
Absolutely. Can you tell our listeners where you're from, a bit about your background, and what made you curious about beverage?
I am from Puerto Rico, Bayamon, Puerto Rico. That's where I was born and raised. 7 years ago, I moved out to mainland US, currently living in Houston, but I did spend a little bit of time in Chicago. I pretty much started in the hospitality industry as a server, at a teppanyaki at a Japanese place, and hopped around a couple of different places as you do when you're in college and in hospitality, and ended up at a really great restaurant where I worked at for a while, where I ended up behind the bar, and that took me to cocktail bars. And truly what made me fall in love with beverage was that first experience coming from being a server to a bartender, where when you're a server, you're kind of that channel that gets to see, you kind of cheat. You got to get the chef's reaction, and you're kind of interpreting that in between the customer and the chef. When I got behind the bar and I created a beverage, even if it was just serving a lemonade or something super simple, there's no in between. You're literally getting that satisfaction and that reaction face to face. There's no intermediary. And truly that kind of changed the game for me.
Can I ask you, what did you study in college?
So I actually started, I got into college through biology and ended up changing to art history, so humanities. And through my college years, it was kind of a very political moment in Puerto Rico. So I ended up going to hospitality school. That's how I eventually kind of got my first server job. And that's how it all kind of interconnected in a way.
So from Puerto Rico, what brought you from Puerto Rico to what you're doing today? Let's speed it up just a little bit, because I think your story is so interesting. You went from studying, biology. Did you say art history? And
Yes.
then now, you're doing all things beverage. What a journey.
Yes. So like I said, I was in restaurants throughout my college years. And after having that experience that I just mentioned to you and my first bar experience, my curiosity kind of went everywhere. And you kind of want to become the best at, or whatever is the best, quote unquote, of what you're doing. I ended up at a bar where I started from literally making syrups all the way to managing, which was a big name now. But back then, we were just hungry kids. And I was there for a couple of years, and it got to the point where the growth kind of got a little stagnant. That was kind of like the biggest thing, right? That moment happening in the island. And a rum brand from Puerto Rico approached me and kind of made that proposition of like if I would be willing to leave the island to do brand work. And it was kind of scary because it's something that you never imagine, going from bartender to like, I did see all these brand ambassadors, but what am I getting into leaving my country? And I left for Texas, worked for, like I said, a Puerto Rican rum brand for a little bit, then went to Chicago. That kind of wasn't really, it was more of a sales position than advocacy or education, which is really where my passion's at. It was a great experience, but not quite me. So then I moved to Chicago. I managed a couple of places, a restaurant. I was a head bartender at a steakhouse there. And then the pandemic hit. And Chicago was really, really tough, really like very strict. And I was about to move back to Puerto Rico because even if I was going to be stuck within the conditions of where we were at, that was still home. And I knew I could get little jobs here and there or things to get going in between. And there was somebody that I had met throughout my bartending careers called Camille Austin that sent me a little DM a couple of months before I had tasted a mezcal that they were releasing as Casa Lumbre, like a new incorporated company. And it was delicious. And she reaches out to me being like, hey, you know anybody in Texas that would be kind of interested in doing brand work for this mezcal? I know you love mezcal and you had lived there. Send me the job description. That was my reply. And I read it and I'm like, why would I send somebody for like the job that sounds like would be right up my alley? She was like, I kind of wondered if you would reply that, but I know you're in between like Puerto Rico and Chicago. Like, I'll get Texas another shot. And now it's been 4 years with Casa Lumbre.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You're
like,
literally
you know who you're going to run into in the world and see your work and give you an opportunity.
And thank God you were so open to the opportunity itself and didn't pass it on to someone else.
Yeah. I think there was just, I guess also during the pandemic, a lot of different things fell into certain places for everybody in the world. And that was just something that, when a door opens and it's something that, it's somebody you respect their products and it kind of all aligns, why not?
So cool. What took you then? Like, let's talk about your education in the category of mezcal. It's not the easiest category to understand. It's just not. It's not like vodka.
No,
right? It really has a beautiful soul and a culture that deserves so much respect. So how did you approach that education? What was that like for you?
I think as a human being and somebody that at least has some kind of like, I don't know, cultural like sensitivity, I was a little hesitant because I am not Mexican. So I did want to make sure that I was being somebody that was representing something with the care and respect that it deserves. I, as a bartender, did take a lot of different courses to dive deep into categories, productions, and immerse myself into going into distilleries and, again, different categories and certifications. But when I started with Ojo de Tigre, there was a particular certification that really called to me and that had been shared with me through other colleagues that was called the pretty much the CEMEZ, the CEMMEZ, which means Centro de Estudios de Magueyes y Mezcales de México, the Center of Studies of magueyes or agaves of Mexico. And it was really kind of, I want to say like a master's degree in a year and a half. You go through everything from the science of the agaves to the regions, the traditions. You get to interview so many maestros mezcaleros, and they really even teach you how to interview them to really understand how to deconstruct these stories and even document them, because a lot of these people will never maybe make it out to a brand or even like a city or a little town outside of where they're at or their mezcal. So in a way, you're doing a historical aspect of documenting this, but also you're learning about so many traditions, so many things that you will never find in books, to be honest. And it was challenging just because even though I'm a Spanish speaker, it's very regional and sometimes there's even indigenous words. So there's a lot of education. And this is a category that every day there's new information just because, again, none of that necessarily has been written. It's a lot of oral storytelling.
But I would imagine what a special experience and maybe even life-changing in some ways.
Yes. I think there was also the benefit of having our master distiller and our, our chief innovation officer, Ivan, who's also a super, agave connoisseur, and having him kind of inspire all of us to really always seek for more information and for new ways of looking at the information that has also been written out there. That's something that also as company culture gave me a lot of confidence to be able to talk about not just the brand, but a category overall.
And it's important to really embrace the category overall, right? Because this is a category I feel it's still emerging. Yes. People are still really becoming hip to what mezcal is, deciphering if they like the taste of it, and noticing that, not all mezcals taste the same, right?
Yeah, I think there's, in a way, maybe not at this moment, just because wine is now so accepted and people drink it like in a very easy manner. But I would say maybe, and then I'm not a wine connoisseur, but I'm pretty sure at some point, maybe decades ago, there was that challenge of getting people into tasting other things that maybe perhaps were not sweet. And mezcal is not a one fits all situation. I always talk about it just because the region, the different species you're going to get, and the production, you're going to get such a range of different flavors and palettes and styles and textures. Again, I would say the more wine that I look at it, I think that category has so many similarities in so many ways.
I have never heard it in my 30 years career in beverage compared to wine, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah. And I think now, even as we explore just agave distillates, as we're seeing agave now flourish in places outside of Mexico, I think it's just an interesting proposition just to, again, explore the different flavors, the innovation that might be in production, and the way that this impacts, the way that we look at and we taste and we explore the category again, because it's just, I think it's a super open conversation still, because there's so much that we still don't know and that we're still learning.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness that there are folks like you that are really putting a face to the category and a voice behind it. Can you talk about, when you were going through your education on mezcal, were there any, as Oprah likes to say, aha moments, anything that really surprised you, maybe around tradition or production?
I think one of the first things that stood out to me that was, I think, my initial first step and curiosity was seeing that there was a lot of similarities with particular ancestral or traditional liqueurs that we made back in the island that are considered illegal or niche, or now I've been seeing on social media maybe a little bit more about them because people that are in the music scene like Bad Bunny or things like that are mentioning it in their songs, so people get curious. So I saw similarities in that and I was like, I want to know more. I think some of my aha moments were really understanding where a lot of the flavors really come from. What are the importance of really protecting sometimes the way, or at least documenting, not maybe necessarily protecting, but documenting a lot of the processes of how people have evolved from how the great grandparents made it to how they've made it now, just because a lot of those tools really do have a lot to do with those flavors that you might get. And I think also seeing that there is a lot of opportunity to really innovate in the sense that this is a very labor intensive and really it could be a very damaging to the land and to the people, just because, again, it takes a lot of physical force to do this liquid. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to also work with tradition to bring a lot of new innovation and production that is better for the planet and better for the people making these liquids.
Especially, protecting the people, right? The people behind the liquids, I always feel like sometimes get lost or forgotten.
Yes.
So it is important to carry their stories, their histories, their culture along with you, what you're doing, which is incredible. Congratulations. I'm proud of you. It's very cool.
I try every day.
That's very cool. For those listeners that have never tried mezcal, what do you have to say about the category and about the brands that you represent?
I think, like I said, mezcal is not a one fits all. So much like I also have so many analogies. It's kind of like when somebody has never had sushi, you're not going to give them maybe the rarest fish in its most purest form. Maybe you want to give them something that is going to spark curiosity. You want something that is gentle, yet full of flavor and full of intention. But you want to guide them through that. It's not just taking a shot, it's very much going around the whole story of it. How did it get to your liquid? Where did we get these plants? What are you smelling there? What are the smells? Because those smells are going to be very attached to those person's experiences in life. So you cannot really tell them what they're smelling. Then how they even tasted, that first sip is not going to be what really tells you anything about the liquid. That's really an acclimation to what we're going into. That's kind of like setting the stage. And then as you go into little sips or little kisses in the mezcal, that's really how you're going to start really noticing. And as you breathe and the temperature of the room, what you're eating, all of those things are really going to make that experience very personal and unique for the person. So you really want to cater that you make sure that you are guiding them in that first, I think, proposition. Or maybe if you're really brave and you buy a bottle at home and you want to do it on your own, make sure that you are setting yourself up to have like a really nice first date. Like really, it's setting the stage to, having that nice, if you like bubbly water or room temperature, cold water, like have your water, have your little snacks, have a little something, and really engage with that. Really be honest with that experience you're having versus just shooting and seeing how you feel. Because sometimes it literally is about where we are at. If you're in the middle of a party and you give somebody maybe a really rare mezcal, they're not going to have the enjoyment of maybe having it sit down at a dinner or over a nice conversation. It's that first impression.
It sure is. You're creating a memory.
Yes.
Right.
And then with our portfolio and our mezcals, I started with Ojo de Tigre, which is a really introductory style mezcal, which is a blend of like a tobala that has a little bit more complexity, and then an espadín that also brings a lot of green flavors. But then we have a cristalino, which is contraluz, which is going to be a little bit more of a sweet profile, I would say. There's a lot of vanilla notes, but caramel, a lot of fruity notes. And it's going to be more similar to maybe the palate of somebody that drinks cristalino versus somebody that drinks a blanco tequila, if you want to kind of compare it. So I definitely say the setting and who you're with. Again, it's that first date, that first impression. Maybe if we are like running and we bump into each other shoulder to shoulder in a hall, that's not the best impression of me. But if we meet maybe over like a handshake or a hug, that's a completely different first impression.
It sure is. Can you give some examples of how, especially the brands that you represent, are paired with food? Because you did mention wine, right? And how that there's all the similarities. And I think that there's a big miss there with folks that drink mezcal. Like, you know what? For me, my favorite pairing is with chocolate, with dark chocolate. Oh my gosh, it's so good. But share yours.
I love that. I mean, there is something in Mexican culture called sobremesa. It's kind of the act or the act followed kind of like by dinner, where you kind of normally people order a carajillo or they'll order neat mezcals And you normally have like a little accoutrements like fruit or cheese or chocolates, as you said. And it's kind of that art of staying and having conversations, right? And a lot of tasting or mezcal kissing happens at that moment. One of my favorite flavors that I enjoyed, for example, with Ojo was pineapple. I loved it with warm salt because the contrast of the freshness with a little bit of spiciness and saltiness really brought out the ripeness of the pineapple. With contraluz, I think dark chocolate, but also star fruit, which is really refreshing. It's something outside. If we're going to do sotol, which is something that we also carry in our portfolio, might not be an agave distillate, but kind of has very similar ways of drinking it that are kind of ceremonial or in that style. I want to have those like red apples. I like to really look at really what grows in the region of the mezcal that we're at. So, like, for example, if we're growing papayas, if we're growing, like I said, like pineapples or those kind of fruits, I really want to pair them with this. If you don't have access also maybe to fruits like the ones that I mentioned, really great agua frescas or cucumber juice. I think those are things that are really refreshing, that complement the palate, that are not overwhelming. And like you said, chocolate is also a great example. But just, I don't know, I think going outside sometimes of citrus is a place I like to explore because maybe people that are less experienced in the mezcal might bite into the rind. That's going to turn into a really maybe bitter experience. So I like to kind of give them more of like fruits that they wouldn't expect. And I don't know, it really makes you also think of different notes that aren't usual in your mezcal too.
Don't you feel like you can't screw that up? It's like for consumers, I always say, like, trust your palate. If there's something that you really love and it calls to you, try it. Right?
I agree with you. I mean, some people really love their coffee and they can experiment with different coffees. And
Yeah.
again, that sit back and forth. Same thing with cheese. Like, I think there is no set of rules. I really do think, just have your beverages how you truly enjoy them. And like I said, I personally love drinking mezcal neat. Sometimes I like to play with the different brands of like sparkling water and flavors. Sometimes I like to try different beers and see how they play. And it's a sit back and forth, not necessarily the shooting, just to play around with how that feels, how that temperature changes over that drink, all of it.
Yeah. Let's talk about cocktails. Does mezcal belong in a cocktail? Let's start there.
I think it does, just like any other category. Now, like just like every other category, there's price points. I mean, if you can afford to use a really expensive and rare spirit in your cocktail, props to you. I don't think the average person can. So I advocate for having maybe those accessible, economical spirits play in your drinks. Also, I come from being behind the bar, so I want to keep a cost at my bar. So I'm going to use something that is affordable but of quality. Now, when we talk about things that are more, I would say, on the ancestral subcategory, things that are really niche, mezcals that maybe grew from agaves that took a really long time or come from a really rare place, it kind of hurts me personally to put it in a cocktail because I want to sip it neat. And like that agave already is born age, has taken all of this process. I am a big enjoyer of not age like blanco, joven, mezcals, and agave distillate. So that's just a personal preference. But if you can and you can afford it, hey, more power to you. I don't tell people how to drink it, just how to appreciate it.
Yeah, I do appreciate it just on its own versus in a cocktail, but I've had some very lovely cocktails with mezcal. Can we just talk about for those who are wanting to make a mezcal cocktail at home, what do you recommend?
I mean, obviously there's a scent, like a range of palettes. I am a spirit forward girly. So I really enjoy, I love Negronis with mezcal. I think they're fantastic. I also think margaritas, super refreshing, number one cocktail. Everybody kind of knows how to make one. Swap it out for your mezcal of choice, whether it be a really inviting, great Cristalino mezcal or like a ojo de tigre, or go for your smoky ones. That's a personal preference. Palomas, something that you can always, make pretty much anywhere. You can always even dump it into your a soda can. But again, I think just taking those classic cocktails and swapping out for mezcal is fantastic. Coconut water is one of my favorite things to put in mezcal. I think it's really refreshing and it's not super overwhelming, really complements really well. Passion fruit, I think it's also just a particular thing because I am from an island. Kind of switching out also, maybe making your Moscow meal, switch it out for that pineapple juice or for a tangerine juice. Like I love tropical flavors. But then again, if I go back into my spirit forward world, then white Negronis, kind of bitter, more spirit forward cocktails are my personal palate, but easy to drink. I think nowadays people are getting more into those obscure kind of drinks.
I think so too. And I think that they still want to keep it fresh, right? In a lot of ways, kind of simple, especially when we talk to the consumer.
Yes. I also recommend like something I always have. I always call it like a little trick because you never know if you have like company all of a sudden. Martinis are really in. You can make like a really great martini, like a 50-50, like, vermouth mezcal martini. Have some really nice, maybe blue cheese olives or things like that, that I think are really great on the palate and make a really nice, like keep it in your fridge, add a little bit of dilution to that already. You have it already in your bottle and just got to serve it when you have company. And martinis are really in, like I said, and why not a mezcal martini? Kind of a really great way to also kind of have a lot of that purity of the agave present in there.
Yeah. And for those of you that like dirty martinis, don't sleep on that. A 50-50 dirty with mezcal. Delicious.
My mouth water.
I know. It goes so good with savory, though, as well. Like, don't sleep on the savory. Don't sleep on the Bloody Marys with, swap out that vodka, throw in mezcal. It is
Bloody Marias, yeah.
Delicious. Yes, Bloody Maria's so good. So, so good. Let's talk about when you are out and about and you're talking about mezcal, right? You're preaching the good words. What are some of the challenges that you've come up against and that you've overcame?
It depends on some of the challenges will come depending on the public, right? So I think with consumers is getting over smoke. It's always like, it's smoky. And they immediately put like, they hold themselves back. Really, I'm like, hey, not all mezcal is smoky. Just not like all wine is, I don't know, sweet, or not all vodka is one way, or same thing with whiskey. And then they come around. Like it normally takes actually the cocktail and then they go back to trying it neat. With bartenders, it tends to be, bartenders have so many options. It really comes down to how are you being made? Are you really being ethical? Are you taking care of the people? And really, it's also, again, depends on the type of bar. It's going to be either, are we somebody that's going to play in a drink or like, how can we use this? Or am I just going to be collecting dust back there because people might be scared of trying it? So I am very, I guess, blessed, or I'm grateful that we really are at price points that people can still afford, especially within their everyday life. And even our premium options are accessible where bartenders are willing to try it or willing to put it in drinks. People can afford those drinks. And people's curiosity spark again, like if you have various options and you're already trying one, that kind of gets you normally on a train of like next time, because you're already trusting that bartender. Next time, what is he going to give me to try that's new? Because then they can also brag to their friends. And that's kind of cool when you can like be the guy that knows the most about something in the room.
Oh my gosh, I totally agree. I think a lot of our listeners maybe have never tried mezcal before and really don't understand the difference between mezcal and tequila. And I think a lot of folks, unfortunately, still think, oh, mezcal, it's that bottle with a dead scorpion in the bottom or something, if it's gimmicky. So can you tell our listeners what is the difference between the two categories?
Of course. So tequila actually used to be a kind of mezcal. The word mezcal is an indigenous word that means cooked agave underground. So pretty much tequila wanted to separate itself because it kind of became like the wine of tequila, that's what it was called back then, kind of became more popular. So they kind of separated themselves from the category, but they do have a denomination of origin and they do have particular rules that have to go by to be called tequila. So, and this is kind of where a lot of my wine analogies come in. Much like champagne has to be from a region, tequila also has a particular region where it is made at, composed of 5 particular states, tequila being one of those places. It is an actual place. And they can only use one type of agave. And they have a particular production method that nowadays tends to be kind of more on the industrial or more catered to modern style of distilling. There are still very ancestral or traditional or older niche tequilas that those are going to be obviously scarcer and more expensive that do have methods that are, again, very particular, regional, and maybe even date back to more than some of these other brands that might be available in your shelf. Now, when it comes to mezcal, again, is an umbrella of different distillates that are made under cooked agave underground. But there's a range of about 40 to 60 different species of agaves that you can use. So much like wine, different grapes, here's different species. And then different regions, you have about 9 states that you can use these agaves from. And even though these agaves might be the same state to state, they taste completely different. They're made completely different. And a lot of times these are grouped into different categories, agave distillates into mezcal that is ancestral, tends to be your more strenuous, labor, physically intensive, niche, and less bottles that you'll find out in your liquor stores. And tend to be more expensive. Then then there are your kind of more traditional mezcals that you will find in stores, more range. Artisanal mezcals is a second category. That's more kind of most of the mezcals that we have out there in brands. They tend to be, they range from expensive to more affordable. There is a little bit of more machinery involved in there, but they're still from your super rare kind of agave species to more common. Like espadín tends to be the one that most people kind of try and get to have. And then there are industrial mezcals that there's still not many of them out there, but I'm sure within as it matures, we might find more. But yeah, it all needs to be made in an underground oven versus tequila tends to be kind of in more steam ovens. And then we take the agaves out of these kind of like, again, underground pit with volcanic rock. We will mash those. And then you will put them in a tub with normally just water. We don't add any yeast. Nature kind of puts its yeast in there. And then from there, you'll distill. And then depending if on the type of mezcal in the area, that'll depend on the proof. For us, the mezcals we are making are kind of modern style mezcals that are lower in proof. Because again, we kind of want to be that introduction. We want people to get into it so that then they can build their palate to kind of have more niche and higher proof mezcals. I don't know if that explains, but
it absolutely does. I think one thing we do here on Served Up very well is educating our listeners about unique spirit categories. And I think you did a great job. I really do. Because you have visited distilleries and you have went to see where the magic happens with mezcal, and so many of us will never have that opportunity. Can you paint the picture of what the culture is like, the people, the towns that you have visited, and really how all of that is put into the bottle?
I think mezcal and agave distillates overall are still a very dear category in the sense that When you see other categories or other distilleries in other categories that I've been to, they're more modern, kind of more industrialized, kind of more what you expect out of somewhere, yeah, industrial or something is made. When you go to mezcal, you can be anywhere from somebody's backyard all the way to literally a formal distillery. When you go to the smaller, maybe like mezcal, niche or mezcals, you can end up being with, again, just a family where there's just maybe a couple of people participating. They might be speaking in indigenous languages. They might be in places that you're going to maybe deem very, very rustic. I mean, there might be literally in dirt and distilling out of like pots that are made out of clay. Animals are wildly walking around. Like, it's maybe not what you think from an Americanized version of what an industry is. But then one of the things that I love is the storytelling aspect, no matter if it's a small or if it's a big place. There's a lot of storytelling. There's a lot of kind of like that family or that like, I need to pass this information down to somebody. So even when I'm at Ojo de Tigre, which is kind of a formal, more bigger distillery, like you see the women talking to each other, telling them, how is your family? How is everything? People still have a sense of like, oh, we talk to different communities that, still are of value and bring value to our businesses because they're the people that are taking care of the land. They're the people that are growing things in the shorter term around the land. So I feel like there's a beautiful connection or weaving of that in the many aspects that hands touch the liquid. And like I said, even from the smallest to the biggest, that's one of the things I see because I don't know if it's the culture of Mexico or of the category. It's just the sharing of the stories, how the people, like what you're drinking in there is literally something that is it's just the people of it. It's not just the land. Like it's an exchange of energy of the land, the people, the storytelling, the culture. It's really, really complex, kind of like the liquid is, but it's something that is really, really hard to really put into words. I wish everybody could experience it. And I think as again, the category grows, we have to also protect or make sure that those spaces still remain so that people can also feel them when they eventually get to be in those spaces.
When you go to those spaces, are the producers excited about the expansion of this category? Are they fearful? What have you heard?
I think there's a lot of excitement, particularly because this is a way that they can sustain their family. This is a way that not just their family, their towns. This is a chain that is bigger than just, oh, I have these agaves in my backyard. I'm going to harvest them. These are years. These agaves take anywhere from 7 to 10 years, first of all, to grow. So it's everything that is happening in that in that chain, like I said, throughout those years, those beans, those corn, that those things that are growing around, the people that are coming to help. This land sometimes is not just one families; it is a plot of different families, or a big family that is like all of the different brothers have maybe dispersed the land among them, or it's a whole town composed of small families. Even if they are working as a piece of the chain, again, they're excited because they're getting to do something that they're great at, that they have a lot of pride, that they've been doing for many years, and making at least in Casa Lumbre, we make sure that they get paid a livable wage that is fair. They get, a lot of benefits, a lot of health benefits, a lot of different things that a lot of companies maybe don't look after. And again, we're also looking for ways to help them make this be easier. We've created systems where we have drones that supervise the area and do preventive work so that these plants don't get sick. We've created programs where we know what is being grown around these crops so that we're not doing monocultures and that we're also doing great for the land, because these lands are going to be inherited by their kids or their grandkids, or even if they sell them off. What does it matter if we're just doing something where, we're not making it sustainable for the future?
That is really taking on a village as well. It is what you're doing when you tap into this category, literally.
One little grain of salt. We're just trying to move towards sustainability. We're not there yet, but I think trying again to look at it all in a 360 and knowing where you can contribute is all you can do so that we make it better. Not the whole thing. That's impossible.
No, it's impossible. But every little thing has kind of like that butterfly effect, right? Yeah. Why is sustainability important to you?
I mean, I want people of other generations to be able to have the experiences I have had. I know that they won't be completely the same just because the world is changing climatically and as people, as technology. But I want to make sure that at least I can leave the best systems or the best pass down the knowledge or whatever I can impact on the best that I can so that others have those resources and those tools so that they don't have to completely start from zero. They can actually continue the work versus just not knowing everything, which is really scary because I think one of the things why mezcal right now is something that every day we're learning is because they didn't have the tools again to document all of this versus maybe in other categories there was monks or there was other entities that had those tools. So I want to be maybe a tool or a resource for the future. Sustainability, I just really want to make sure that, like I said, there's a lot of processes that are not great in these categories yet. And that's not from evil or anything. It's just not knowing that there's better practices. So I want to make sure that if I really want people to have the best quality juice, it's not just through the distilling, it's through everything that encompasses.
Absolutely. What's next for you, Nino?
Wow. This year I'm going to be actually launching a special project within the tequila category. I think it's going to be a very interesting proposition. That's on the short term with Casa Lumbre. I think on the long term, I still want to keep exploring within not just agave distillates, but Latin distillates. I think there is a lot of opportunity and I think there's a growing curiosity towards really digging more into what Latin America has to offer in the liquid realm, especially in the more distilled aspects of it.
Yes, again, so much to discover, right?
Yes.
How exciting.
It's right there, but we haven't quite dabbled into it.
Yeah. So I can't wait to see what you do. Where can our listeners find you?
Of course, you can find me on Instagram through Tigresa Tropical or Tropical Tigress in Spanish. That's kind of like my main source. I'm recently dabbling into TikTok under the same handle, Tigresa Tropical. Kind of put out a little bit of like little bits of nuggets of knowledge on TikTok. I'm kind of on the elder millennial, so still dabbling again in that platform. But I would say, Instagram is my main. Feel free to reach out. LinkedIn, I'm there also under Nino Gandulla. If you ever have any questions or if I can be a resource to anybody, not just in the agave realm, also in cocktail making as a female in bartending or management, anything that I can, please reach out. I'm an open book. And if I don't know and I cannot reach you out to anybody, we'll just dive into that journey together.
That is so generous of you. Thank you so much. You've been just an absolute delight. I want to wish you, just on behalf of the Served Up team, some great health and a lot of peace. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Bridget.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.